So now we've talked about the idea of consumer equilibrium and basically how people make decisions on what to buy based on their preferences, their utility, and their budget. So now that we've looked at that, let's kind of see what happens when things change. So when it comes to prices of one specific good can either increase or decrease, or stay the same. So let's say the price of a good increases. If that happens, that increase in the price of the good leads to a decrease in the quantity demanded. Now that's just from the basic supply and demand, the law of demand that says that if price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. Price goes up, people demand less units. So what happens is they end up buying less of that good. Now, in terms of the equilibrium, what that means is that if they are buying less of this good, right, well, because of the marginal utility per dollar, getting the most bang for their buck, they're going to switch away from that. Right. So this is basically the substitution effect that we talked about when we talked about supply and demand. Price goes up, it becomes relatively more expensive to buy it, so you'll substitute away from buying that good and more towards the other. And the opposite is true when we talk about a price decrease. So this is just going to kind of show why that is. It's really going to help to prove that substitution effect, which we discussed. So let's take a look at that. So let's look at the example. We're going to stay with our example of the apple and the oranges. And so if you remember, in the first case, an apple was $2 and an orange was $1. Well, now let's say that apples become cheaper. And now apples are only $1. So apples cost $1, oranges cost $1. So relatively speaking, now every apple you buy becomes less expensive compared to an orange. You don't have to give up as many oranges to buy apples anymore. So let's go through and do all of our analysis again. And so now, because an apple only costs $1, that marginal utility per dollar is going to be the same as the marginal utility. And let me format this. Okay. So now let's go through and make our decisions. So if you remember up here with our first example, we ended up buying 2 oranges before any apples. But now, because apples have become half as expensive, the price went down. Well, now, the first thing we're going to do, let's see, we can either get 12 units of utility per dollar for the first apple or 8 for the first orange. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to buy that first apple. The marginal utility you get from it is 12, and the cost is $1. So now let's look at, so once you bought that first apple, what's your next decision? Let's see. You can either buy the second apple and get 10 units of utility per dollar, or the first orange and get 8. 10 is still greater than 8, so there we go. So your second decision is to buy the second apple. You get 10 units of utility per dollar. It only costs $1. Now we get down and you say, all right, well, now we're at our third decision. You can either buy the third apple and get 8 utility per dollar, or the first orange and get 8. Here it doesn't matter. So let's say you do the first orange and then the third apple, and you get 8 and 8, and they each cost $1. All right. So we bought this and we bought this. What's our next decision? Our next decision is, let's see, we can either buy the fourth apple and get 6 units of utility per dollar, or the second orange and get 7. 7 is greater than 6, and so our next decision is going to be the second orange. And we get 7, and let's just copy this down for a few. So we're taking the second orange and getting 7, so that's next. All right, now if we go through and do this, we see that next we can either add the fourth apple or the third orange, you get the same. So we're going to take the fourth apple and the third orange and get 6 and 6. And next we can get either the 4 or 5, so then we'll get the fourth apple, or the fourth orange, and get 5. And then finally, both the fifth apple and the fifth orange both give you 4. And so 10. So we get the fifth apple, fifth orange, and we get 4 each, and we spent $10. So now if we compare that, because apples went down, all right, the price of apples, instead of getting 6 oranges and 2 apples, okay, we are getting, we are getting 5 and 5. Okay. Now, this also helps to talk about the income effect a little bit, which says that as the price of food goes down, you're going to buy more of it because you just have more money. And so you can see that because the price went down, right, you're going to give up 1 orange, but you got 3 additional apples out of it. So it's really both effects kind of working itself in there. And because of that price drop, instead of getting 44 total units of utility, you got 70. So as you can see, this has really worked out pretty well. Okay. Now, depending on the price drop, the number of oranges may actually go up, but you're still going to be moving oranges for apples, all else constant. Now, if we go back here, so that's with the price changes. The other thing is income. And so if your income changes, you'll have more to spend. Now, the distribution of the income will depend on normal versus inferior goods. So we talked about this idea of if you have more money, you'll buy less of it with the inferior good. We talked about ramen noodles. Other examples are bus tokens, because if you make more money, you may drive into or you might take the bus less and drive more. Spam is another example. So all these are examples. So the effects of income rises will really depend. However, the price changes, that's really the biggest one. Now, because of the substitution and the income effect, all right, price goes up, you're going to buy less of that good. Now you're going to take that and spend more on the other, and substitute away, but you're also going to buy less because you have less money to spend. But for both of these reasons, with the marginal utility theory we discussed, all right, your quantity demand is going to go down, and this just reinforces what we talked about when we talked about demand, and specifically with the law of demand.